Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll get started. So we're going to have a panel discussion now. The topic is quite interesting for everyone, I'm assuming, beyond chatbots, Agentic AI, and Kubernetes. So we'll talk about what's working, what's not working, and what the future might look like. Cool. Let's just start by introductions. Hi, everyone. I'm Pavneet Ahluwalia. I'm a product lead with Azure Kubernetes Service in Microsoft.
There we go. Okay, hi. I'm Idit. Nice to meet you. I'm Idit Levine. I'm the founder and the CEO of Solo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Valeria. I'm a site reliability engineer at Akamai.
And I'm Arik. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Robusta.
Cool. So let me just start at a very high level. What are you working on now on the AI and Kubernetes intersection? What are you excited about? What are some of the projects you're working on?
So we've built the Holmes GPT. Holmes is an autonomous AI SRE. It basically looks at all your metrics, log, traces, and then it looks at VMs, at network, any data that can be used for troubleshooting. And then it gives you an automated root cause analysis. And like we were starting by doing only RCA. And then as more and more users started using it, they were asking for basically being Holmes to be more proactive, so being able to detect issues. So this is the latest project we're working on.
Well, at Akamai, I support big data and AI application workloads. So I'm first of all focusing on observability for AI, because those have different metrics than traditional workloads, right? So we're talking token usage, latency, rate limiting. And the second thing is using Agentic AI for our incident resolution workflows. So basically to help us triage, investigate, run commands, and help us get to a faster RCA.
So Solo itself is a company that's working on gateway and networking. So gateway, service mesh, that's the space that we are in. So we're working on this, but it's very, very interesting right now for the AI world because everything is distributed as well. And there's new protocol and stuff to support. In general, we have what we're aiming to do is to basically close the gap between, the AI world and bring all of it to us, to the cloud native system. And there was 3 projects that we basically started doing that we're hoping to close that gap. Number 1 is K-Agent, which is basically more trying to take Kubernetes and basically extended it to become a runtime for agent and AI. So bring MCP tools or frameworks. The second one is basically Agent Gateway, and Agent Gateway is basically networking, and it's basically the enforcement point everywhere. Who can also be pluggable for ambient mesh, so that way it's becoming an agentic mesh. And the third one is, we just announced it, is agent registry. And to me, this is the government's basically, right? I mean, every customer or organization that we're working with this thing that they started with, right? What is flavored and whatnot. So we basically wanted to build it together because we think that instead of each of you building it independently, it's good to do it together. So those 3 projects, we're hoping, will help us become the hero again in the organization and run those workloads.
Yeah, it's interesting. Arik and Valeria, you both mentioned RCA and troubleshooting, and Idit, you're building a platform to run agents in Kubernetes. What are some of the use cases you are seeing? Are you still seeing more troubleshooting scenarios, or are there other use cases that you're also seeing where customers are using agents in Kubernetes?
Yeah, so that's interesting because when we started, because we are platform engineering, that's our OC, that's the people that we're working with, that's what we know very well. When we started it, we specifically position K-Agent to basically focusing on for the DevOps use cases, right? And I think that's where we will overlap. But I don't think that that's the only, to me, this is the new Kubernetes. It's the extended of the Kubernetes. Eventually we want to run on this. There is a gap. We close that. Do I care what type of agent is running there? I think every agent should run there. And we're working with our customers. They're not running. It's not only the platform engineering team for sure. It's finance agent and HR agent and anything, because in the natural, it doesn't matter. It's an agent, right? So exactly like we don't care which application is running when, we're running on Kubernetes. So to me, it doesn't have to be specific. I will say that because our community is relatively big, everyone that came to talk to us was looking for incident. That was basically the one that we're looking, right? Incident, how to understand what something is wrong. So that was a repeatable request. So.
Makes sense. And Valeria, you as an end user perspective, do you see incident management and troubleshooting, or are you seeing other use cases where you're using Agentic AI?
So I want to talk from my SRE perspective, like how we use it. Agents are very good, like triaging, investigation, running commands, right? But they also lift off a lot of like the tedious work that we have to do as an SRE. Like since we're tracking what we're checking and data sources and stuff like that, it's also very good with postmortem, like post-investigation. So we can tweak it after it's done, but we can also do like post-incident summaries. It's also very good with that. I think that's mostly it, at least from the triage part, yeah.
Yeah, information summarization and pulling it all together. Makes sense. Arik, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, so for us, we're seeing more and more demand for being proactive, so to monitor your cluster 24/7 and then notify you on issues you're not aware of. And then everyone also wants auto-healing, but they are a bit afraid of it. So we're not ready to let the agents do write operations, but they do want maybe some allowed operations to do, maybe restart pods, or doing operations which are not destructive. So I think this is the holy grail that everybody wants.
Yeah. And you mentioned afraid, like what are the challenges you are seeing with both using AI for Kubernetes, but also using AI in Kubernetes? Like is security, efficacy, what are the big challenges that you think they are struggling with?
I think for us specifically, we're dealing with observability data. So LLMs, as everyone knows, has limited the context window. And then observability data is infinite. So one of our biggest challenges is how do you make the agent do RCA and like to be able to look at the right data in order to come to the conclusion. So we had a few examples where the agent is basically querying the logs, but there are way too many logs, and then it misses the important thing. So you need to work really, really hard on observability in order to get the right data into the context window.
So like, how do you see that, like all three of you, like how do you see that solving? Because it's pulling data. How do you manage that context window? Do you think that something sits in front of the agent that might need to do that context management? Or do you think the agent itself will get good enough to really focus on the telemetry or the time windows that it needs to?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that we are just extended the open telemetry. I know there is the open telemetry, then there's the open LLM. I don't really call it whatever, but yeah. So we even extended more exactly like what they said. Like, I mean, the most important thing is what do context windows super. You paying for it, so you don't want it to overwhelm it. And the question is that how you bring in the right context. So we actually built something. We didn't open source it yet, but we might. But basically, that extending it and basically filtering it because it's extremely important. I think, yes, that's one thing, like observability and the stuff that you talk. I mean, there is way more to talk about security when we talk it with agent, right? So, but I don't know. Maybe we will finish that first, and then
I can add something.
Yeah.
Well, I think from our perspective, agents are as good as the data they can access. So part of that brings security issues because we have to like manage the tools. And that also brings like the authorization and authentication layer to it, especially like you mentioned with auto remediation. Now we need scope permissions, and a lot of solutions right now like bring you like RBAC with read only. But if we want to start thinking ahead, we need to start introducing approval workflows somewhere. So yeah, we need to start introducing that, and part of it that very important for security is auditing that, right? We need tools that offer us to track what did it check, why did it check it, what data it could access, and if we approve something, who approved it. So I think that's very important from the security perspective.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and actually not something people think of upfront, the auditing of what the LLM is doing, what is it touching, what it is pulling. That's very interesting. And you touched upon security. Yeah. Unpeel it a little bit. Like there's a lot to unpack.
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, let's start, right? So first of all, my belief personally is that everything will run in a sandbox. This is, I don't know if you saw it, but if you ask me, that's the coolest thing that happened right now in the Valley, let's say, right? In the cool people world. I mean, code execution is very important. Those agents is not deterministic, right? Skill playing a very interesting role here. So if you look at and you can see that because that's the main announcement from Google, this conference, right? It's all about the sandbox. So I believe that everything will run in sandbox. The MCP will run in sandbox. Everything will run in sandbox because it's not deterministic, and we are worried about what's going on. I mean, we personally, because Google didn't finish the pull request until this week, we use the Anthropic one, But if you see that, Anthropic is working on this, Google is working on this, I'm sure everybody else. This is the very important thing. So first of all, that thing, right? I mean, you're saying that people doesn't want you to basically, they wanted to be aware that there is something wrong, but they don't want the agent to fix it, and that's exactly the reason. I think that that's one way to stop it, but there is more, and the other one is basically the networking, right? In the nutshells, that's what we know how to do very well in the network. RBAC, what can you do, what you cannot do, and all of this stuff. So I think that there is a lot of game that we can play there as well of permission. And the last thing that I would say is identity. And I think everybody's talking about identity, but it's important. I mean, I can tell you what we're doing, but in the nutshells, that agent identity, it should be different than my identity, right? Even though it's working on my behalf, because maybe I can delete the cluster, but you don't want the agent to have the ability to delete the cluster. So what we, for instance, did, we basically created an identity that it's a combination of the two jobs. And basically now you can put policy to this one. So that's something, for instance, that Agent Gateway is doing. And I can tell you that, talking to a lot of customers and a lot of prospects, the biggest problem that people right now are solving is basically MCP. Everybody has an initiative for MCP, and therefore security is a big, big role. That's what Agent Gateway is so important, in my opinion. And then the second thing is everything that related to, right, so now we need to do this registry. That's the two things that we see.
So OAuth is not the answer.
No, not the entire answer.
Yeah. So Arik, you're from the other side of it, right? Does this come up often in conversations, like because Holmes GPT is an agent at the end of the day, what identity it should have, or should it inherit user identity? How do you guys think about it, and what are the questions?
K-agent. You should use K-agent. Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely. Like we, on bigger company, typically, we have, let's say, a single agent running in the cluster, and it's performing actions for different users. And we often get a request that some users are allowed to see only some namespace, and they expect the agent to be able to inherit basically the user's permissions. And it will only be able to access the data the user is allowed to see. And this is sometimes not trivial, because this is related to Kubernetes access and to metrics access and so on. So you have to delegate the user permissions all the way through. And this is quite a challenge.
Yeah.
I want to add that aside from user permissions, adding like this granularity also helps with topics like data exfiltration, right? Like maybe it's not that I wanted to check everything. There are certain things that I don't want it to access, certain namespaces. So I think it's also important that tools have this out of the box so we can like easily configure it.
Yeah, makes sense. And it's funny, like I've heard both sides of the story. Like I was talking to somebody today actually, and they mentioned that they want developers to use these agentic UIs, right? Now the developer might only have access to a given namespace. Now, but the failure might be because something outside the Kubernetes cluster that the developer doesn't have permission to even do read. So the tools are only as good as what context you are giving it access to. So are we kind of in a friction point there that we are going to not see these tools be very high efficacy because there's going to be that, RBAC constraint always?
I mean, I can tell you want? No, first. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know, you guys are focusing on the tool is important. I think MCP is very, very popular. I don't know if you see the next stuff that's coming to the spec. It's called elicitation. And the problem that we see, and that's problem that we're solving. So let's assume that you're in your organization, right? And you have an MCP server and you have a client, right? First of all, you need to make sure that it will go to this enforcement point. But again, your identity is in the boundary of your organization. But let's assume that this MCP tool is going to GitHub, right? And so what you really need to do, right, is basically when first of all, the first question is the user is basically allowing to go to the tool. Let's assume that that's thumbs up. Now what you need to do is basically to swap the token for the is GitHub one, right? So that's a lot of the stuff that we're doing. That's number one. And number two is elicitation. So that's the idea of maybe the tool need more data. And I will explain what I mean. Again, in the same like what you want to make sure is that if the user is, there's this concept of basically elicitation that if the tool need more data, because exactly that's the problem, it actually can request that from the user. So for instance, one of the things that we did, we built that framework to Agent Gateway, right? So it's actually, in the first time, it will basically forward the user to basically agree that it can actually fill the relevant data. And then we actually kind of like acting in the next one as an IDP. So that's something that we also
That's a
do.
very interesting
Yeah,
part,
so there's
yeah.
a lot of stuff that, that's what we're doing because that's what we see that people have challenged right now in organizations. So I don't know if that was helpful, but I mean, that's the idea of how to ponder it.
Yeah, I think there is a trade-off between what the agent is allowed to do and like according to what data it has access to. This is how good the result would be.
So we talked a lot about security challenges. I want to talk about failures, right? What is like the biggest failure or most often failure modes that you see when running agents, either in Kubernetes context or even outside of Kubernetes context for that matter? Like what are the things that keep you up at night outside of security from a failure point of view? Yeah, go ahead, Valeria.
I think our biggest issue is model hallucinations, but due to lack of context. I was talking to some people here, like in KubeCon, and I was asking them, like, how are we providing the business context to the agents, right? Because sometimes they have access to all the tools, they have all the observability data, but one example I was giving them is like, I don't know, we have a pipeline of clusters that they're consuming from each other. They have a producer-consumer relationship. How do we identify that what the issue we have in cluster 4 is just noise because the actual issue is in cluster 1 and it's consuming from it? So I think that's like a big issue we're having right now, especially with failures, because it suggests stuff because it's lacking context.
Makes sense. So the not just context within cluster, but the broader environment context.
Exactly.
Arik, are you looking to solve that problem?
Yes, so we create test scenarios in order to make sure the agent gives high accuracy results. And then in one of them, we created a test scenario where you have an application and it has latency because it's accessing Postgres. And this is because there's a missing index. So in order for Holmes to be able to detect the issue and analyze it, we gave it a tool to access Postgres. And then it was great, like we ran it multiple times and Holmes was able to detect it. But on some scenarios, we saw that Holmes is actually trying now to create an index. And then we said, okay, this is a bit dangerous. If Holmes will try to create an index in production, it will do more damage than good. So we had to think, though, how can we put enough guardrails in order to make sure Holmes is not doing destructive operations.
And I'm curious, like, do you see, of course, people who are building agents like, Claude Code, Anthropic, or like Robusta for that matter, we are building evals on our side and we're building guardrails on our side. But like Valeria mentioned, every environment has its quirks. So do you see consumers of agents will also end up building their own evals, or like how will they get that confidence of, hey, no, I'm safe. This is not going to go on off track and do something weird in my environment.
I think consumers are expecting the agent to behave properly. I don't think they are going to create evils. They can fine-tune the agent by adding instructions or giving it extra knowledge, either architectural diagram, but I don't see them actually going and writing evils. I don't know what you guys are seeing.
Cool. Moving on. So how do we evaluate and trust an AI agent in a live, noisy, constantly changing cluster? Like, as a user, right? I get from a builder point of view, you're doing extensive evals. Like, what signals should I use as a user to gain confidence? Is it just about try and error and slowly you'll build confidence, or are there things that I should watch out for as a user? Hard question. Like, I understand.
Do you want me to go? Okay. As I was telling you before, part of the issue we have is like the model hallucinates. So I'm not going to talk about evals, but part of the issue is trusting the answer it's giving you. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So how, as a user, do you build that trust over time, or like what guardrails do you put on your side to build that trust?
I think part of what we're missing right now, I want to start with that, is that not a lot of options have the ability to reinforce things that have worked, right? We need to track, for example, because the tools are very good at doing the RCA, they can do the triage just fine, they can run the tools, everything's good. They suggest a remediation step, they suggest hypothesis, but how do we tell it, okay, this remediation didn't work how do we track it?
Feedback loop.
Feedback loop, exactly. Then, like sometimes when you're troubleshooting a problem and ChatGPT something gives you a suggestion, you run it, you're like, it didn't work. And you do that 5 times and you're like, okay, this did work. You kind of want to keep that information because I think it's very valuable and it's part of building trust with the tool. Maybe next time, if I have the same issue, I want it to start with the suggestion that I already confirm it's working. I don't want it to run the same 10, 15 tool calls to get, again, to the same answer.
No, that's a very good point.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, we don't. That's my answer. We don't trust the agent. That's why human in the loop is so important. That's why eval is something that will get a lot of things. That's why guardrail and everything that we can do in order to scope it down to the right thing. We don't. We shouldn't. Not now. Not anytime soon. Maybe in the future, of course, I hope. But I mean, right now, no one that I see, and by the way, any CISO in any other organization that we're working with, not allowing them to do right ever of the agent. It's all read and so on. So I believe, honestly, my answer is we shouldn't. I mean, we should. There's way more tooling to build in before we actually trust them.
Sorry, guys. Conversation over. Arik, do you want to add something?
I think us as builder, we need to put the agent under enough guardrails so the users can have a trust in it that it won't do any destructive operation. Then over time, you work with the agent, and then you get positive results, and you build the trust. And I think in a few years, the trust will be much better, and then maybe we can discuss like operations with more access.
Yeah, even like at AKS, when we're building these experiences, what we've realized is you want to decouple the actions from the summarization and knowledge, translation part. So you might trust it to say, do this remediation, but then you want a separate system to consume that, which is more deterministic in actually executing the task. So that's a pattern that we see coming up, where there will be 2 systems and they'll be talking to each other. One is AI based and the other is more deterministic, logic tree based.
And the permission, only the second one has it.
Exactly. Or the second system will have permission to do things. Yeah, exactly. Cool. So moving on a little bit, typically we've seen evolution, right? We started with SRE, DevOps, and then platform teams came to manage all of the infrastructure and provide portals to developers internally. Now that we've added a new component in the mix, which is the LLMs and the agents, who do you think will end up owning, or what do you see now? Who owns the Kubernetes platform, and who owns the AI pieces or LLM or the agents part? Do you think it's the same set? Do you think, what are you seeing in the Wild West out there?
So here we see that platform engineers are the one responsible to install the platform, to add all the integrations, to configure security and permissions, and then the users, which are SREs and developers, are using it, and they can customize it for their needs over time. So the platform teams are doing the initial setup and putting the guardrails, I would say, and then other engineers are making it better over time.
Interesting.
I've seen like 3 models. So the first one is platform team owns everything. They provide you the agent, the tooling, and provide it basically as a service for devs or DevOps to use it. Second one is some kind of federated ownership. They give you like the agent and the integration capabilities, and you just set up your tooling and configure it with your runbooks and what you need. And the third one is SREs deploying the agents and managing the tooling. I think that long-term, maybe security should be the one in charge of the guardrails and auditing. I think that platform team and SREs are doing that job right now, but I think security should do that in the long term.
Yeah, so what we see in organizations, so let's start, because I think even the Linux Foundation, the CNCF is trying to position it. There's always 3 pillars, right? The first one is the LLM model, the second one is inference, and the last one is training, inference, and as well as an agent. I think that if you're looking at what we see, at least, I mean, in organizations, first of all, I'm curious to hear what you're doing, but a lot of the inference is being done by the big people, like big organization is the one who's doing it. I don't see, a lot of the people that we see is that actually going outside and basically consuming those models from those places. And then, for instance, failover can be very interesting. And I think that that's like inference. The Linux Foundation is basically pushing that should be owned by the Kubernetes team. When you're looking at agent, actually, it's interesting because that's not exactly what they thought. Like, I mean, there is a lot of, if you're looking at the most popular one, I will say something like the LinkedIn platform, probably Vertex, maybe. Like Agent Core. I mean, that some of them are behind the scene, maybe using Kubernetes, but I'm pretty sure Microsoft not, Amazon not, because they're not really internally. It's ECS. So the point I'm saying is that I don't think that that's been pushed. What we see in a lot of organizations that actually, as I said, like the AI team got the responsibility. Then they went to something like LangChain. That's why LangChain platform got a lot of hit, or to the cloud provider. But what we see right now is that they're starting to delegate pieces for the platform engineering team. And what we see is that, for instance, as I said, MCP is like the biggest one. Every company right now, they have an initiative and charter for MCP. And it's recently, like I can tell you, like today I talked to a customer and basically said until August, I didn't even know what it is. But now that's the biggest important thing that there is in my organization. It's a big company and relatively innovative company, right? I'm not talking about
No,
so
we've seen that as well. Like from last KubeCon in London to this KubeCon, every conversation I've had has had some MCP component to it. So yeah, no, definitely that's a pattern that we've seen more often. Anything else you guys want to add to it? Cool. So let's move on. I think, Valeria, especially I want to kind of get your perspective on this because you're the end user of a lot of things that we're building. From a user perspective, what are the things that you want to see us build? Like, what are the gaps you want, like Idit, Arik, and me or others in this room want to fill, not just from building, not just using AI point of view, but also maybe building AI agents point of view?
I don't want to go into the context thing too deep, but I think that's our main challenge right now. I know Idit's working a bit on this, but I think traditional Kubernetes was not built for agents, right? It treats workloads like a black box. So we're missing a lot of that state. So I think that's where we need to focus on. Again, the feedback loops are very important. And again, talking to some builders here, they're offering some solutions, AI SRE. I think we're still missing that. And I've seen some other options. For example, I was seeing there's like a causal model to trace the root cause instead of doing it depending just on tool calls. So I think we need to start seeing a bit more of that, definitely.
Cool. I guess last question, and then we can maybe leave some questions over for the audience as well. For end users, what suggestion would you have? Where should they start? Like, I'm new to AI on Kubernetes, or I'm just new to AI. Where would you say, what use case or which part of the stack should they start with?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is that, it's funny because if you're looking at the market in California, a lot of the stuff that they're talking about is multi-agent, right? A2A and conversational agent. Well, we said no one is starting like this, right? I mean, and by the way, do we really need to do multi-agent? Probably not, right? Because honestly, exactly like you're not starting buying microservices when you have a simple application. So monolithic, it's fine, right? So people starting with just identify a use case. It could be very simple. I don't know. I have a lot of resume and I need to filter them, and then just really work from the use case back. Otherwise, honestly, it's very, it's you need to make sure that it's actually
it's easy to get lost.
Or it's just wasting time, basically. So that's the only suggestion that I have. I will say one more thing that is important, it's kind of related to what you say. I mean, think about us once again, guys, right? We are the platform engineering team. I will guess that all of you are working very, very hard and doesn't have enough time to do all the work that basically you will want to do, right? Already, right? I think that the ratio between how many, application team you have versus how much we exist in organization, it's already very, very hard. So now imagine that, right? Those engineers, the application engineer is going to be better and better and get more and more content to the application because they're using Cursor, because they're using Copilot, all this stuff. How are we going to actually handle all this load? So I do believe that agent will be that problem. We solve that problem also for us. And this is why in K-Agent, that's where we started. So I really generally believe we need as a community to basically help build those agents, because otherwise, if it's hard for you right now, wait, that will be even more interesting soon. So.
Yeah, I think if I had to recommend how to start with building AI application, I would first try to get experience with tool calling. So one of the amazing capabilities of LLMs is being able to ask a question and then translate it into an API call and then process the result. I think this is a big jump in the capabilities of software in general. So if I would start to get some feeling of what AI applications look like, this is the way I would start. And it doesn't matter if it's a Python code that calls an API or some call to an MCP server. I think you'll get a great feeling of what you will be able to achieve with AI.